Hi, everybody. This is Bethany Jett, and welcome to the first episode of season 2 for the Serious Writer podcast. In this episode, I am interviewing Brian Gehrlein, and he was absolutely amazing. What I wanted to let you know is that my audio is not as loud as Brian's, so apologies in advance for that. But I really hope that you enjoy this episode as much as I did while filming it. And without further ado, here we go.
This is Serious Writer.
Hey, y'all. It is Bethany Jett with Serious Writer, and this is one of our amazing season 2 podcast episodes. And I'm so excited about this one because we have Brian Gehrlein.
Yep.
And he is the author of The Book of Rules. This is Dennis. And it's an amazing picture book. I absolutely love it, it's your first book, and it came out with FG.
Yeah.
The second book coming out. This is not a Sleepy Bear book that's coming out this fall.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
Yeah, and okay, best Monday morning ever. So my editor Andrea Spooner was like, "Happy Monday! I got a treat for you. Here's some like initial color, official finalized color palette kind of choices for some of the more finished of the dummy of the book as it's coming along with 2 spreads." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like fangirling super bad because it's Jen Harney, and Jen Harney is super talented. I'm so lucky to get to share this book with her. It's a really funny story. Of course it's comedy, and it plays on the idea of like the winter time, beautiful imagery, like hibernation bear books. And that's kind of the inspiration for the point. Because I was noticing like a lot of these books are very lyrical and beautiful, and they're cozy and quiet. And I was like, let's wreck that. Yeah. Let's like destroy it and do the opposite of that. And so there's a narrator. It is metafiction because apparently I can't shake the habit. And for my sophomore book, it's another metafiction. And this time there's a narrator, and it's an owl, and he just wants to get the bear down for hibernation. And so there's kind of this like unspoken dynamic of a parent trying to get their kid down for a nap that kind of fuels some of the comedy and the tension for the story. But every time that the narrator owl goes to open the den for a very quiet and cozy and peaceful nap time for bear, the exact opposite of that is happening on the other side. And there's something going on with these woodland creatures. There's like a jazz flute and like guitar riffs and like a 10-piece drum set. And it's just like, what is going on? This is not a sleep conducing environment. So there is a surprise at the end, like there's purpose behind it, but we just want to get the bear to go to sleep, and we have to endure a lot of silliness before we get to that point.
That's perfect for nap time because that's exactly what happens.
Oh, yeah. I think I was drawing a lot on my experiences as a dad with a 3 and 5-year-old currently. And yeah, I'm so excited to get to be under Little Brown for fall 2025. So mark your calendars. Woo!
Yay, I'm excited. Okay, so we're going to talk about how you help writers at the end because you do such amazing work with so many, especially over on Twitter X. It's always Twitter for me. I've seen a lot of that lately.
I am team Twitter. I don't say X. We don't say
Sounds weird.
Twitter. It's so weird.
All right, let's dive into the 3 best practices. So the first one, because there were many that we could have talked about tonight.
Yeah, I had a hard time picking. Even like
they were good.
Thank you.
The first one is a process for reading and analyzing the picture books. So what makes them work? Why do we want to read them? And page turns, which I think we're going to talk about like in another one of these best practices. Yeah. Just give it to us. Like what makes it great, and how do you analyze and know if a picture book is worth? I don't know. That sounds weird. Not worth reading, but if it's going to be maybe query ready or publisher ready.
Yeah. So I try to so when I grab a picture book off the shelf, I try to keep a really open mind, and I try to think like a reader. I think which is ironic because most of our audience are not readers, they're listeners. But I think about a little listener, and I think about their what are their brains doing? So I read picture books, I'll grab them off the shelf. And I'm like, what is driving this story? Like what makes this book like work? So here's an example. Brenda is a Sheep by Morag Hood. So fantastic. I could talk about this one for like hours and hours and hours. But like you pick it off the shelf and you see this wolf. And of course I'm going to talk about wolves on this podcast. You couldn't get away from it because anybody that knows me for 2 seconds on Twitter knows that I will talk about wolves.
There's a wolf somewhere.
Yeah, like you have to have a picture book with a wolf in it because duh. But anyways, Brenda is a Sheep, I think, is a brilliant example of like what drives this story, what makes it work. Like, why do we keep wanting to turn the page? How does this thing like function structurally? So like the title gives it all away. Brenda is not a sheep. And so we know just from the title and the image of Brenda not being a sheep that the entire picture book is going to be a lie. It's fundamentally built upon an untruth, right? And we know that Brenda is a wolf and wolves eat sheep. And so we have some predictions happening in our minds, some inferences like already happening, ready. Like little listeners can already pick up on that. They know what they're in for. And so like what motivates page turns. So there's a really great line and how the art is working. So there's this line, there's this image of Brenda looking just totally dejected, holding a bow and arrow, and a sheep, an actual sheep, is holding the arrow, and he's happy. And the art is telling us that this sheep thinks they're playing like catch or something. And the text says the sheep learn lots of new games from their friend Brenda, like catch. But then we know based on what we saw in the title and what we are predicting Brenda is about, that this was not a game of catch. This was Brenda attempting to like straight up shoot the sheep with a bow and arrow to make some mutton sandwich. And so like there's this unspoken like everything is a lie, everything is not as it seems, but it's building towards something because we know it has to go somewhere. Like and where it's going, where we're thinking about it as readers, is like the question we're asking ourselves is Brenda going to get lunch? And that's going back to the book of rules. Like that's something that makes that book work, is that we have to follow the rules of the book, or like we're going to be dentist food. And so that's what makes that work. So I'm just fascinated as a reader of picture books, like grabbing books off the shelf and just asking those questions, like, what is it that's making me want to turn the page? What is the unspoken thing that's not being said, that's driving the story? What are those questions that are making us curious, that make us want to keep seeking the answers? And I think that psychology and that just dynamic, that mental game, a lot of times like makes or breaks a picture book. Are we aware of all that when we're writing? Probably not. But like while you're revising and you have something down, just like putting your author hat aside and being like, if I was a reader, I had no idea about this story, like what would be those questions? What would be those unknown things said? What's motivating these page turns? And like what's actually making it work? What's that secret sauce that's actually driving? Yeah.
Okay, I love that. Let's talk about page turns for a second. So just in case any of our listeners are not sure exactly what we're talking about when we say page turns, can you give us just like quick?
Yes. Yeah, so let me find a really good page turn moment. Okay, so here's a good example. I just grabbed a bunch of stuff off the shelf that we have recently had from the library. Okay, so this is Oliver Jeffers' Stuck. And it's about a boy that gets a kite stuck in the tree. And what makes this book work is how will this Floyd get his kite out of the tree, right? And so initially he throws a shoe up there to knock out the kite. Then he goes to his cat, Mitch. And when that doesn't work, he gets a ladder. And so on this particular page, it says Floyd fetched a ladder. He was going to sort this out once and for all. ... Ellipses moment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my, there's something after this page. What is he going to do with the ladder? Is he going to continue the pattern of throwing things into the tree and like keep getting it stuck? No, surely not, because that's not what we do with ladders. He's going to climb the tree like a sane human being, and he's going to take these items down. So surely Floyd will make a rational choice. given what our prior knowledge is of letters. We turn the page because we have to at this point, because that ... is begging us to. We just have to know what's going to happen. And the next text on the next page is ... and up he threw it. And so that tells the readers, oh my gosh. So we're going the absurd route. He's going to do things that are completely illogical, and hilarious and funny and awesome and unexpected. And that makes us want to see what's going to happen next. It's amazing.
Yep. So let's jump into our best practice number 2, which is, now I think I've heard this said both ways. I think I say pagination, but I think I've also heard it pagination.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're doing it right.
Sometimes on Tuesdays I say pagination. Just depends on what way the wind is blowing. Yeah, I really, it's like the tomato or tomato of Kid Lit, and maybe there's a guy or gal that's like super important that knows, but I don't think anybody else knows, really, truly. It's one of those unsolved mysteries.
It is. And so as a literary agent, I said this in one of my interviews about picture books, is that, like, I don't think many agents are gonna turn you down for not putting the page turns in, or by putting
might have been our interview on Picture Book Spotlight.
Oh, it might have been, actually. It was.
Yeah.
But it helps. And I will say,
right,
it shows an extra level of knowledge of picture books and the industry when I see a manuscript broken up into spreads. So can you talk about the importance and take that from like the manuscript and what that goes to the book, all the things that you do?
Yeah, there's man, like, and if I could add up like a short list of like really big like epiphany moments on my journey as an author, of like, this is when this particular thing really clicked and I really, figured out, like pagination, that was one of those major things that was like, whoa, total game changer. So I can't completely claim credit for being like, and now I'm going to start doing this for my own brilliance. My first agent, Melissa Richardson, who sold the Book of Rules, I was her first client in her first sale. And like on our journey together, probably before we even sold the Book of Rules, yes, just kind of like as we were starting out to go on sub, she'd be like, hey Brian, it's like a nice manuscript, this is like good, it's not bad, but it's not a picture book yet, it's not a book yet. And I was like, what? You're not speaking English. And she was like, I want you to try to like put it into spreads and try this template, try this. And I was like, okay. And I had kind of heard about, this practice, and, read about things online, and, seen examples and like templates. And I was like, okay. What I didn't expect was how right she was. I didn't expect that it would have any real like impact on my stories or my process, but it like totally like sent me down this like total new path that I didn't see coming. And there were like pacing issues that I had no idea about. There were like going back to what I was first talking about with page turns, it was like, you have to, when you paginate, you have to actually answer the question. You have to wrestle with why we're turning the page right now. You actually, before you make that decision and indicate what spread you're on and divide out the story into these, beats, you actually have to sit down and go, but why now? Like, what's going on in the story? What's the reader thinking about that makes them need to turn the page here? And there's a ton of implications and like variables that go into like, why now, given like how many, moments you have, the finitude of the form, how many spreads you have, like the length of it, and like all those important moments that, you have to like, I need this particular moment. But so all those things affect the decision, but like, you're not making those types of decisions unless you're doing that. You're not thinking about it like an actual book that needs to be printed on an actual like printed format that only particular like models work with. And so we sold Book of Rules. It was paginated into 14 spreads. It became 16 spreads. So it became the 40-page self-ended model. And I kind of fell in love with that. So my second book, was paginated into that. And my third book, which is currently in acquisitions, can't talk about it.
There's
Anxiety.
so much I can't talk about.
I know. That's paginated the same way. So I'm like, I love the 40-page picture book because you get 16 spreads to tell the story. And I love thinking about wordless spreads. That's like a whole other conversation. But yeah, like you don't know your book until you make it a book and visualize it as a book and think about like what is the reader doing with your book and why they're, and you learn so much about your story and yourself when you get to do that. And it's just fun too. Super
It's so
cool.
true. I think it helps too if you're writing a very lyrical book. Some of my clients, I'm
Mm.
not speaking as an author, just as an agent. So like you're definitely the expert when it comes to writing it. But sometimes I'll see when we'll do the spreads and shift things around, some of the rhythms have to be switched around on the page where it was written completely different. And then once we see how the spreads are laid out, all of a sudden it's like these beats have to go on the in my head on the left side of the page, and the right side of the page has to have this text. It's
Yes.
fun to have this journey of seeing that now visually.
Yeah, and like the specificity of like left hand side, right hand side, that got really relevant for me with my second picture book. This is a Sleepy Bear book, but this is not a Sleepy Bear book, because it in the art notes it indicates like the right hand side of the book is Bear's den about to be opened. So when we turn the page, we're kind of opening his door, and then we're inside with this interior spread. And so it keeps like that convention kept repeating. And Andrea Spooner, who's been like so much fun to work with, she's so amazing. She really liked the pagination, and it was really like it was cool to get to talk with her about like why this text here and this decision. And yeah, you got to do it. It's just so fun.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
So let's talk about art notes because this is a great segue.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
I'm excited to hear your thoughts on art notes because your book is illustrated by Tom Knight, the Book of
Yes.
Rules. And so I think I see a lot of conversation online about how difficult it can be to break in as a text only picture book writer when you're not.
I talk about this like twice a week on Zoom
Yeah,
calls with authors all over. Yeah, all the time.
let's
Yeah, it
dive
really is. And oh man, like, okay, so I just want to start this section with a reference to another podcast I heard recently on, and I talked about it in a blog I wrote about a little bit ago. And I think it was on my post with Andrew Hackett in his debut, Ollie the Acorn, and the blanking on the rest of the title. I'm gonna fix that right quick. But anyways, Ollie the Acorn and the Mighty Idea, illustrated by Kaz Windness, and phenomenal book. So on that post, I mentioned another podcast with the Manuscript Academy, where they discussed visual storytelling in picture books with my editor of the Book of Rules. I was so excited. It was Melissa Wharton Vogan there, and she said things that I've been thinking about in terms of art notes and pagination. She gave language to things that I've been thinking, but yet didn't have the words for like years. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that's what I've been kind of telling my clients and author friends and thinking about it for myself. But she's like totally validating everything, which is ironic because the Book of Rules really didn't have much of any art notes. But anyway, so please look that up. It's super, super helpful and freeing if you have been on the fence about this convention. But I am very pro art note. I will die on that hill. I will debate you, and I will fight you. Let's go. I love visual storytelling, and for context, I'm a theater guy. So to me, art notes are stage directions. Like that's really what I think about them. I frame them present tense, like it's happening right now before the reader's eyes. I'm very playful. I write very open-ended, so it's open for interpretation. It's very inviting in that sense for the other person telling the story. So I think about them like action notes, and I know a lot of people think about them like that, and you hear that a lot. But picture books are one of the only media where kids are getting information visually and textually. And so like to just leave that out entirely and to not think about how the art is telling a story, even just a little bit, it means that you have no vision for this story. And I think when you have art notes, communicates that you do have a vision for it. Now, you don't want to be prescriptive, and you don't want to be dictatorial and tyrannical about, like detailed paragraph long descriptions of the goodnight moon scene. Like, there needs to be a red balloon in the upper right-hand corner of the page, because so be it. This is my book, and that's my, purview. It's not that. It's like, I can read some of my, I would love to read some of my art notes. So we're going to pull this up. I'll look up the Sleepy Bear book one.
All right, while you're doing that, this is where, so I think that I probably am on the other end of the spectrum with art notes, but I'm kind of going around. I think it's because I see so many art notes put into manuscripts where almost there's more words in the art notes than there are in the book. And sometimes that's okay. Yeah. But I think a lot of times, like, couldn't you, instead of telling the person what to draw, couldn't you kind of build that into the story so that it has to be part of the story? I think that's where I'm like, art notes.
Yeah, so I think it's about opportunities for letting the art tell the story and setting up that visual storytelling so that it's getting to, so like, for instance, okay, so this is on, this is from my manuscript. This is going to be a verbatim art. Now, this is the 1, 2, 3rd spread. We turned the page, the text leading us into that the very page turn moment was, and Bear yawned. He yawned a big sleepy bear yawn and opened his cozy quiet den too. Page turn. The art note on this next spread is, there is a woodland creature band warming up for some kind of musical performance. The den is abuzz with preparations and music. ... Bear is intrigued. So a lot of times for me, it's about emotional information. Like, where is the character at emotionally? So like, the text says nothing about what it is other than some more specific things that do, like, they don't get prescriptively like dictated in the art note, but the text does suggest some direction. So the next line is a 10-piece drum set, sick guitar riffs, a random jazz flute. This isn't gentle or quiet. Stop all that racket. There are no musical shenanigans in a Sleepy Bear book. Sorry, Bear. Let's try that again. So I love thinking about moments where, how can the art tell the story where the text can't and doesn't? Recently this year, I've been really into wordless spreads and like having at least 1 or 2 moments in the story where the text is taking the back seat, and maybe it's just a few words, or maybe it's just like none. And so there's this Gene Kelly quote that I'm going to paraphrase. So a musical theater guy, it was about his philosophy on like, when in musical theater we sing versus we dance. So when their emotion is too high for words to work, the character needs to be singing. Then if that can't be effective enough, if singing just can't do it, that's when you dance. And so this like outpouring of emotion happens in these beautiful dance breaks in like the mid-century movie musicals that we see, like Singing in the Rain and stuff like that. So here's an example to be a little bit more concrete and less abstract. In John Klassen's I Want My Hat Back, one of my favorite books. There's this wordless spread, probably super famous. You guys can probably picture it in your minds. It's after this long journey, Bear has finally confronted Rabbit. You stole my hat. So much tension. You have to turn the page. It's everything we've been looking for this whole book. No words. Just eyes. Just 2 characters staring each other down. It's the main street, middle of the town at sunset. It's like the Western. What's going to happen? We have no idea. There's just so much tension. It's so high. The art is telling us everything we need to know. There's no words, right? And then we have, of course, the very controversial scene with the next page. Bear is sitting and the grass is broken and he says, I love my hat. So it's like, I know John Klassen, he was making the art and the words, but like, if I was going to write that, what would that art note be? What would that wordless spread have said? Spaghetti Western standoff, 2 characters, eyes full of tension. What's going to happen? Is Rabbit going to run? Is Bear going to fight? who knows? Like I might say something like that, kind of abstract, where there's like, it could go either way, but just to communicate to that illustrator, like, this is the emotional feeling of this visual scene, and you get to interpret
I love that. As soon as you said, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have that on my desk right now.
that. Of course you do. Yes.
Love that. Oh, it's so much fun. One of the things I've been suggesting to people, and something I've been doing myself too, as an agent coming in on picture books without having written them, is trying to read 100 picture books that have been written, like do the classics, but do some that have been written within the last 3 to 5 years to really get a good idea of the kind of books that are being told and how the art is telling the story and the words and all that. So I've been finding people's like manuscript wish lists and going to the library.
Oh my gosh, yes. So, okay, this is another one that the art is saying so much that the text never says. This book, I'm gonna have this on Picture Book Spotlight. Susanna Lloyd and Patty Donnelly, Here Be Dragons, is just a quintessential example of the worlds apart dynamic of where the text is versus the art. So at no point does the idiot main character, a knight, know what the heck is going on. The art is telling this completely separate story of the fact that he's been on a literal dragon this whole time and had no idea. He ends the story thinking that dragons don't exist and he's never seen one, even though the reader has seen so much. And so it's like, what were her art notes to Patty? And like, I would just love that. And going back to that first question of like just best practices and like getting your hands on the shelf, and like sometimes I just type up manuscripts and I'm like, what would I have said in this art note? Like what's going on visually? Like what would I have said if I had written this manuscript? And I study that and like, well, how does that work? And what's the best way to say that in an inviting, open-ended kind of note that an artist would just love to dig into?
I love that. Oh, we had a few questions come in from some of our patrons.
Yeah.
Got 3 of them, so I'm going to put them in the chat one by one. This first one is, did you try to submit to open publishers first, or did you acquire an agent first?
Great question. Yeah, so I had the silly idea from the very beginning that when I decided, okay, I'm going to finally do this, I'm going to be an author, I was like, I'm going to be traditionally published. I'm going to like, because I like pain and sadness and rejection, and I like drama in my life, and I like I just like chaos. So I was like, I wanna sign up for that pain. I'm gonna go up and get my heart broken, and I did 600 times. So I never. Now, okay, I did occasionally through SCWI, take advantage of those. For this month, you can submit to so and so editor and get to the top of their slush pile. Like I definitely did that, but even if I had gotten something from that, I would have been like, hey, agent, I really want to work with. Guess what just happened? Would you like to go in on this? Like, I need your help. I wanted a career partner. And I'm on my second agent now with Jennifer Matson with Andrea Brown. She's so great. Melissa was so great. Jennifer's so great. I would give them more than 15% because of what they bring. And like, let's not put that on paper because, but
it is not binding.
Yeah, so I really wanted that business partner to do it for the long haul and go traditional, even though I knew it was going to be hard and next to impossible to even get to this point. It's crazy that I'm even like that I have books out there, and that it's just still wild to me. Still wild.
It is. It's tough, but you got to keep going. It is a hard space to be in. All right, question 2. Did you have more than one manuscript to entice the agent?
Yeah, so like this is a famous story now, or infamous. I think probably more infamous to people who know me from the internets. I had in like a span of about 2 years, I had about 2 dozen picture books, about 25 picture books that I submitted to something close to 85 to 90 agents and a handful of editors. And so I was kind of operating under the assumption that if this agent didn't like this book a few months ago, like they're not rejecting me, they're rejecting that specific work. So I'm going to get back up again and say, hey, I'm sorry that wasn't a good fit. What about this? And so I was always sharing different manuscripts with with multiple agents, and so not at the same time. You got to like wait until everything's processed and you've been rejected. But I didn't get my first offer with Melissa until my third submission, a third book that finally was like, okay, this guy's got some persistence. I'm liking what he's doing. I said no twice, and he kept coming back to the plate. He's not going to sit down. So and then eventually we had an at auction first sale for her, and with 2 Big 5 publishers, and I was a nobody, and she had never done anything. It's like, that can happen. Like, it's crazy.
I think it's amazing. It is. It really is. All right, question 3. Oh, and I want to actually add on to that. I love that you did that, because I have a couple of clients. It was the same thing. Like, I passed on their first, 1 or 2, but it was the magic of the third and plus the fourth and fifth package. And I was like, yes, yes.
And what's cool about that is it's a microcosm for what actually is continuing to happen within me and Jennifer's relationship, and same with Melissa. And so like, there's many rejections within the author client relationship. I'll be like, oh my gosh, I have this new manuscript, check it out, Jennifer. And she's like, Brian, I thank you. Like, maybe this is a lighter career thing. I don't even know what this is that you sent me, but okay, it has wolves. Let's put that on the shelf for now.
It has wolves.
This. What else do you have? And so it's always what else do you got? What else do you got? What else do you got? And you have to keep coming up with new stuff. And I think if you put all your eggs in one basket, like, it's just not going to work out in life in general. And I think in this industry as well. So it's just that deep bench, that big repertoire, and just keeping your stories like growing and being explorative and just developing your stuff. Like, that's what's going to make the difference, and just keeping going.
I agree. And our final question that came in was about websites. So a little bit on, I guess, the marketing question a little bit.
Yes.
So here's the question. Did you pay for a new website before being published, or did you make a new one after you sold your first book? So what came first, the book deal or the website? I'm thinking
chicken or the egg, the cart or the horse, the bear or the rabbit with the red hat on. Yes. So back in time before COVID and before children for me, I was a theater teacher in high school, and I was like, I don't think I want to be a theater teacher anymore. I want to make like a massive career shift just because I'm burnt out, and maybe I want to leave education, and I want to work out more because I have no work-life balance, and I want to be creative, and maybe I want to be an author. And so like, I chose to leave teaching theater. And so I put my resignation in that November of 2017, but then finished out the school year. My kids were devastated. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But anyways, so that like December, I was like, okay, I'm going to be an author someday. That's part of this career move. I'm going to like, maybe I'll be a librarian. I'm interested in library. I did become a librarian, but
cool.
I have this blog. It was called Death by Confetti. And it was this blog I had run since college. And I would share like poetry and satirical children's literature, and like creative nonfiction, and blogs about my spirituality, and just like all kinds of like, I was just like pouring out stuff. And it was on, I think it was on Blogspot. And then I switched over to Wix. And so I was like, okay, if I'm going to be an author, this like very sophomoric Brian, like angsty college kid blog needs to be more intentional. And so it was like, what if I like talk about picture books and stuff? Like, what if I asked authors randomly if I could just like talk about their books, and like, I just post stuff. And I'm a theater guy, so let's call it Picture Book Spotlight. And so I converted my like silly college blog into something different, and I started generating content the January, I think, of 2018, and I just started cranking stuff out. So I kind of had this vision of like, well, if I'm going to be an author someday, if that's what's going to happen, if that's what I'm going to try to pursue, I need some infrastructure. I need to build a readership now, and that way, like, I don't have to do all that later. So I think it makes sense to kind of like to participate in the community, and to be a known entity, and to like try and put yourself out there and engage. And like, so I think those types of practices are very much in the ballpark of what authors do. And like, you're publishing and you're creating content, and you have to be organized and all that good stuff. So over time it's developed, and I pay for like the premium Wix site with like the premium comments and the email, like sending out lots of emails. I have almost something like 2,800 ish subscribers.
Oh, that's great.
That's built since 2018, some of which are just people that were subscribed from like college, like friends reading my really weird stuff as I was like, just like, here's the thing. So yeah, and it's just kind of over time, it's just kind of built and built.
Background noise. All right, so as we close out, can you share a little bit? We hinted at PB Spotlight, but can you share how people can work with you? And because I know I've got some clients who they absolutely love you and loved working with you. So can you
I love working with them.
That?
Yeah. This has been the funnest thing I've ever done. I had people essentially begging me to offer professional critique services just through the years of just like donating random critiques, and then like just the happening of COVID and how Zoom was a thing. And it was like, well, maybe I don't want to type on a manuscript exclusively. Maybe I want to like talk to people. And like, it's always felt like when I got a critique, I had follow-up questions. I wanted to like engage with people a little bit and be like, what do you mean by that? Like, well, what about this? And like brainstorm a little bit and like have that conversation, that back and forth. And so I was like, maybe that's what I'll try. And so people were like, Brian, you got to like, you're doing like, I really like your Zoom method. And like, you approach it like a teacher, ask good questions. And you've got this, you've got like a skill set that I think is valuable. Like people would pay for this. And I was like, no, like no one's gonna, I'm nobody, like, nobody wants to pay. And then I finally got over myself when somebody was, one of my like good friend, longtime clients was like, dude, like just do it. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll try it. And then it like exploded. And I was like, what? Why? And so like I thought I had imposter syndrome as an author, but now it's like a million times fold, because like people are truly trusting me with their babies, and like just to have that trust has just been life changing. So I've met so many people. I've critiqued over like 250 different manuscripts. I now do written critiques. I do second look critiques. We do like it's an hour-long Zoom, and I frequently will give out 25% off coupons, which I'm going to do on this podcast too. So if you're listening to this podcast, me and Bethany, I'm just telling her right now, she has no idea I was going to do this. We are going to come up with a unique promo code that will run for a full month from when this publishes, so that you can, if you're curious about working with me, I'd love to be a part of your story. And you can see how it goes. So what should we do?
Well, Dennis was the password for this.
Something with
Dennis and wolves.
Yeah, wolves. There's wolves, and the Book of Rules is coming up on its 3-year anniversary, which is wild, this fall.
That's great.
So, I think I had a promo code with another podcast I had to do with being eaten by Dennis. So let's make it a little bit different than that. How about maybe something with wolves? Yeah, let's go with wolves this time around, because, and ironically, the third book that is in acquisitions right now, it's not a wolf book. So
it's not.
I'm still a wolf fraud. Like I have no credibility to my wolf obsession yet, but there's more things in the works. So how about Brian? Yes, let's do that. Brian's Wolves, 25 off.
Okay, I'm going to put it in the chat, and I will also make sure it's in the description box.
Yes, Brian's apostrophe is optional.
Oh, I was going to say, will it take the apostrophe?
It will, and this English teacher is cool. If you don't lose, like you can leave it off. It's fine. I will not dock your grade on this. Brian's Wolves, 25 off for 25% off of the total price. So yeah, I also offer pagination with written manuscripts. Like if you want to get written feedback and then have me paginate your manuscript where I think the page turn moments should be, and get it all put up in like a specific format, I can do that. And I have like a 1-week turnaround option. So there's like a little something for everybody.
I think it's super, super valuable. So I'm going to put 25 off with too many F's, but we'll have it right when we put it in the description box for you. So I'm not really sure what that was that they just said. We'll make sure it's written down so you can see it. But Brian, this has been amazing. And like, I feel like I could talk for 30 minutes on every single one of the topics that you had in
Yeah.
there. I feel like we
Like
just scratched the surface of
we
it.
did, yeah. But that's okay. And we can talk about all these things if you work with me on a Zoom call. We can go down further rabbit holes, or maybe we can do another Zoom in the future about anything. I'd be open to whatever.
Okay, I think that's fantastic. So we're gonna pop off here. We're gonna have a quick little after party for patrons who are with us live. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Brian, thank you for being here because this is absolutely amazing.
This was a ton of fun. Thank you, Bethany, and everyone for listening. Thank you guys so much.
All right, we will see you next time.
Bye.
This is Serious Writer.